It isn't often that a complete, untouched temple from the ancient world is uncovered by archaeologists, let alone a site with biblical associations as well as the historical record. This particular site in modern-day Israel, excavated over the last 6 years, is so rare that it's the only one of its type discovered in the last 50 years. Dating to the 12th century BC, around the time of the Israelite invasions of the Levant. Sites like this Canaanite temple have the potential to revolutionize our understanding of this mysterious epoch at the end of the Bronze Age, a time when almost every major civilization in the Middle East collapsed, some at least put to the torch by the infamous Sea Peoples. Now in 2020, the initial analysis of this site is finally complete, allowing us real insights into this long gone by time. Just to the southwest of Jerusalem, upon a vast mound of earth within a national park, lie the ruins of a vast ancient city. Seated upon an imposing tell made up of the refuse of thousands of years of subsequent occupation. This is Tel Lachish. In its time, one of the most important cities for the Canaanites of this region during the Late Bronze Age. The city was first discovered and excavated by William Albright in 1929. Often called the founding father of biblical archaeology, Albright's work shed light on an era of history long considered unknowable and lost. Excavations have continued on the site for nearly 100 years, uncovering much about the ancient people who once lived here. The Canaanites, mysterious inhabitants of the Levant who may have first invented the alphabet. During the 2010s, the fourth expedition to Lachish, under Professor Joseph Garfinkel of the University of Jerusalem, was begun. Astonishingly, on the second day of digging, whilst looking for Iron Age 10th century BC remains in the northeastern corner of the Tell, a previously unknown and completely unexpected building was found, dating to a much earlier era. In the process, shedding new light on ancient life and religion in the region during the Late Bronze Age, just prior to the destruction of the site, much like other cities all over the Mediterranean and beyond during this tumultuous time. It was only due to severe erosion that had taken away 5 layers of the city that the discovery was made. And within a few days, small models of the Canaanite gods Baal and Resheph were found in the earth, smiting their enemies with hands held high. Temples like this had been discovered before in other Canaanite sites like Megiddo, Nablus, and Hazor, but often looters get to the sites before the archaeologists. For years, this site would be excavated. And now, finally, the findings have been released. Today, all that remains here is a vast mound of barren earth. Yet, long ago, during the Middle and Late Bronze Age, the city of Lachish was one of the most important of all Canaanite strongholds. Destroyed and rebuilt many times over the centuries, with occupation beginning as early as the pre-pottery Neolithic of the 6th millennium BC. The site remains a prime example of both the opportunities and difficulties that have long accompanied life in the Levant, situated on the periphery between empires and powerful kingdoms. Major developments at the site began during the early Bronze Age, and by around 2000 BC, a unique culture we can identify as Canaanite came to rule the entire region. The remains of a cult centre, along with religious offerings, have been found from this era, as well as a palace and vast sloping wall surrounding the citadel, a testament to the warlike times these people lived through. In 1550 BC, one of the most powerful empires, long situated near to Canaan, came crashing into the region, destroying the city and occupying the entire area for centuries to come. Of course, this foe was Imperial Egypt, under the pharaoh Thutmose III of the 18th dynasty, newly ascendant and reunified after a period of outside invasion. Interestingly, one of those peoples who had invaded Egypt, the mysterious Hyksos, are thought to have been Semitic in origin, perhaps a people sharing common ancestors with the Canaanites. When the city was rebuilt, it was by a pro-Egyptian government, a mutual relationship that would influence both regions over the centuries to come, and one that explains many Egyptian-style items found at this 12th century BC temple. During this period of Egyptian rule, Lachish is mentioned in the Amarna letters, a series of correspondence between Egyptian high officials and regional governors of their vast empire. And finally, in the Bible, with the account of the sack of the city by the Israelite leader Joshua. Though, of course, the details remain obscure and ever difficult to pin down. Archaeology tells us that the city was destroyed in around 1300 BC, before being rebuilt once more as one of the only Canaanite settlements to survive into the 12th century BC, by that time seeming to control large swathes of territory. Finally, in the 12th century BC, around the time of the Late Bronze Age collapse, the city was destroyed for good, suffering the same fate as nearly every other Canaanite settlement, being abandoned entirely. When it was rebuilt, it was done so by an entirely different culture. Most temples from the ancient world are robbed of their artifacts before archaeologists ever have a chance to examine them, whether in antiquity or in recent times. It was precisely the severity of the sacking in the 12th century BC that means we can still see the contents of this temple today, the walls and ceilings having collapsed here very quickly in a firestorm which swept through the city, sealing them in for over 3,000 years. The temple here isn't in itself particularly spectacular, being similar in size to other Canaanite temples found at Nablus, Megiddo, and Hazor. Of course, what was found inside is of most interest. The front of the compound is flanked by 2 columns and 2 towers, leading to a large inner hall. The inner sanctum has 4 supporting columns and several unhewn standing stones, nearly 10 feet high, which may have served as representations of gods. Interestingly, this temple is squarer in shape than usual, typical of later religious buildings, including Solomon's temple. A treasure trove of artifacts was found within, including bronze cauldrons, an array of jewellery, daggers, axe heads adorned with bird images, Egyptian scarabs, and a gold-plated bottle inscribed with the name Ramses II, a powerful Egyptian pharaoh. But there is influence from other areas besides Egypt. The temple has small rooms along the sides that would have been used for storage, hinting at Syrian influence, such as at Iron Age sites like Motzah. Inside the temple, the team found an amulet inspired by the Egyptian goddess Hathor, who was said to welcome the dead to the afterlife. But it wasn't just Egyptian gods worshipped here. They found statues seeming to represent Baal and Resheph, Canaanite deities. This inner sanctum was a place where people brought tribute and prayed in the Holy of Holies, thought to be a divine spiritual opening to the other world, where priests could speak directly with the heavens. In this place, sacrifices would have been made to the gods Baal and Resheph, war gods, depicted smiting their enemies. But another fascinating find was made here too. A pottery shard engraved with ancient Canaanite script. The first Canaanite inscription found in a late Bronze Age setting in over 30 years. This is the oldest known example of the letter Samek, and a unique specimen in the study of ancient alphabets. Before this date, there is cuneiform writing and hieroglyphics in Egypt, but these were extremely complicated systems only utilised by scribes, who spent their entire lives mastering these techniques. The scripts of the Levantine coastline, however, used by Canaanites and their cultural descendants, the Phoenicians, were much easier to learn, eventually spreading all over the world, becoming the primary form of writing today. You can read the official reports from the dig online, and more research is still being done. Only time will tell what treasures still remain to be uncovered in the ruins of this ancient city. You've been watching Archaeology News. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Tell me what you think in the comments, and I'll see you on the next one.